ridiculous controversy around Rishi Sunak receiving private healthcare. I don't know who thought this would be a surprise that Rishi Sunak has received private healthcare. He is very wealthy, we all know this. The socialists love to throw it in our faces, even though personally I care much more about what a politician does to this country rather than their personal life. This is true with Boris, with Sunak, with anyone. And it's quite ironic as well because Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer, they're not working class at all. But we don't seem to have that conversation, do we? But this has been brought into conversation around Rishi Sunak not using the NHS. And today he caved in and he said that he does use the NHS. What do you think about this, Darren?
Well, actually, for Sir Keir Starmer, he keeps saying his dad was a tool maker. Jess's dad owned the factory, right? It's not the same thing. But I don't care about a politician's background like that. As you say, quite rightly, I think what's important is what a politician does in practice, right? David Cameron had a much different background to the one I did. But as long as he was actually advocating policies that I support and want to vote for, and to be fair, he did when he gave us the referendum, then I'm happy, right? Happy as Larry. Couldn't care whether you went to Eton or the local comp here in County Durham. I don't care. So to actually take that in isolation, Rishi Sunak using a private hospital or whatever it might be, some form of private healthcare, I would say that Rishi Sunak is actually doing a patriotic thing there because he's saying, right, despite the fact I'm being taxed a lot, it's almost half of your tax take, the UK's tax take is spent on the NHS. Despite that, I'm going to use my hard-earned money, in this case his wife's hard-earned money, we'll move on quickly from that, and I'm going to use that on paying for additional private healthcare. Now, anyone doing that is basically being double taxed, right? Because you're not only being paid for the NHS that you're not using, or it's being taxed rather for the NHS that you're not using, but you're also going ahead and using private healthcare as well. Now, what I would say is that I think, well, everyone should have the opportunity to receive access to good, decent healthcare that's saving lives. And right now, the position we find ourselves in with a 1940s setup, this is a 1945 institution that is trying to compete in a 2023 age, in which we've had a groundswell of migration, illegal and non. We've had a groundswell in the natural population size. People have had children, of course. The population has grown. We haven't been in a war, thanks be to God, in which the NHS has ballooned, Jess, right? It now takes on these whackery and wokery elements of inclusion, diversity, and equality people, and a whole host of other things. It might be your optician, it might be your dentist, it might be whatever else that wasn't imagined in the first iteration of the post-war consensus in which Attlee and others set up the NHS. Actually, it was a Conservative administration that did the pre-planning for the NHS. And you look at all of that and you think, well, it's not fit for purpose. People in this country are unnecessarily dying. So I don't care if Rishi Sunak uses private healthcare, but I do care that Rishi Sunak recognises that people in this country are dying unnecessarily, whilst those in Israel, whilst those in the likes of France, Germany, Switzerland, they're all experiencing for around the same, if not less, of the total GDP of those countries. As far as our tax take on the NHS and expenditure on the NHS is concerned, they're getting better outcomes for either the same or less cash. Now that surely is a damning indictment on the NHS as it currently is functioning, as it's currently set up. I think we've got to do away with that 1945 socialist system. And we've got to, that's not to say, before people say, oh, he wants to privatize the NHS, he's going to sell it to Donald Trump. Well, I've seen Donald Trump's tax returns and he couldn't afford it. The NHS is the second biggest employer in the world, Jess. And looking at all of those things in isolation, it's clear to me that no, not privatization, But yes, having a mix of private and state run, having a mix of competing systems, it might be by region, it might be whatever it might be, different trusts competing with each other, being able to actually ensure that we receive the same healthcare as those in Israel and Switzerland and Germany, not America. I don't think the American system is one that we would seek to emulate in this country. But that's the trope that's thrown at people for very sensibly, in my opinion, arguing that the NHS is unnecessarily, if not killing people, being negligent in saving lives. Now, what the point, Jess? What is the point rather in a healthcare system that is useless at saving lives? That's what I want to know.